morning.
Thank you. Are we on? Is this it?
Yes,
We're doing it.
We're
right.
going.
Hello.
We've started.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
So I thought probably the best way to start was to tell me about, being a prick.
Oh, yeah, so that's all going on for the moment. That's a lot of fun.
Yes.
So I'm doing a show at the Edinburgh Festival this year, which is called Prick. Or as you never quite know whether it's called Prick or whether it's called Stuart Goldsmith : Prick. Both are kind of, ways of looking at it. But the Edinburgh Fringe Society, I don't know quite the name of the organisation, effectively the guide, the Edinburgh Fringe Festival guide, has censored the word prick, and they've replaced it, in my case, they replaced it with an exclamation mark.
Which seems a strange way of doing it.
Yes, well, they said we've got to censor it, and we said, we'll accept an exclamation mark if it has to be like that.
Yeah.
Because basically I'm a huge fan of the artist Pink. So I thought we'd go after that model. Well, it's an inverted eye then, isn't it? So it kind of looks similar.
Yeah.
But it's opened a whole kettle of worms, because we kind of complained about it vocally here and there. Only in quite a minor way, it has to be said. And then Chortle picked up the story, and then a guy called John Fleming did a blog about it, and then Richard Herring did a blog about it. And because he is, that kind of it opens a much wider situation than I thought was the case. Because Herring did a show a couple of years ago called Talking Cock, which I thought was just fantastic, really genuinely interesting. Like he is, he's really interesting and funny.
Well, it's his take on the vagina monologues.
Exactly, yeah. I think that was a starting point.
It's the alternative.
Exactly. Yeah. But he did that at the Fringe. I saw that however many years ago it was. It must be sort of 5-6 years ago, if not terrifyingly longer.
Well, I think it was the 10-year anniversary or something.
Is it really? Okay, well then it's 10 years ago. I've been going to Edinburgh for a long time. But it was allowed to be called Talking Cock then, and now it's censored. And then when we've mentioned these things, a bunch of other people have come out of the woodwork and said, not only can I not call my show what I want to, but there's this one person who's doing a show in which they wanted to put in the blurb in the Fringe Guide, for which we're all paying 400-ish quid.
Yeah.
They wanted to put as their 40 words to include $3 signs, as in make $, like that.
Okay.
And they were told they weren't allowed because it wasn't part of the house style. And enough issues have sort of happened that rather than it just being an isolated incident with me, who ordinarily wouldn't say boo to a goose and thought, I've said prick and I've had my wrist slapped, well, fair enough. Actually, we've realised there's clearly been a bit of a sea change in how the festival, which ultimately should be there for us, and it grew out of performers. That's the whole point of it.
Yeah.
And it should be supporting its artists. And now, you can't get past this fact that with Herring's show, it was allowed to be called Cock, now it isn't. Consequently, there has been a change. Someone tell us why. Because we're all paying you, and we're paying you in some ways to represent us and to facilitate our work at the Fringe. So, that's all the political stuff. The show itself, it's quite ironic, really, that the show has got several starting points, and because I haven't finished writing the show yet, it's now, if it doesn't spoil the illusion, it's early May, and I've got 2.5 months left to finish it. But this started off being an interview, it's become a monologue.
It's all right. No, don't worry.
The starting points for the show were I always write about myself. It's all autobiographical, and one of the things that I wanted to look at this year, and this will be my third solo show, is my addiction to approval and my addiction to being liked, and how I'm frequently described, not just by reviews, but sort of, as a personality as well as a performer, as I'm very likeable. I get on with people.
Yeah.
And I was sort of looking at that and going, that's interesting, isn't it? Because I think in some ways, I suffer a lot from anxiety. That's what my last show was about.
Yeah.
And one of my anxieties is that people will like me. I feel like I'm addicted to people liking me. I'm addicted to approval. And so I'm very likeable, but at the same time, I'm desperate to be liked. And there's nothing less likeable than desperation. So I've kind of taken that dynamic and gone, okay, there's something going on there I want to find out about. Written a show about some of the more craven. I'm trying to sort of show up the less positive aspects of my personality. I think that's good for clowning, for comedy. You need to reveal the reasons you're a terrible person. So I'm writing a show about my hypocrisy, my selfishness, my egotism, my self-centeredness. And one of the jobs I wanted to do was push me out of my comfort zone. And I would never call a show prick, and I'd never risk calling, because the poster for the show is me going, "Hey,
and is that being censored too?
Yeah, well, I believe that. I don't know. We certainly had it. But had I paid for an advert in the Fringe Guide, which at £1,500 plus VAT I wasn't going to.
You didn't, yeah.
But had I, it would have been censored. And of course, that's what Herring's found out now. Is that his thing that he's paid for has also been censored. So he's justifiably furious. But I think it's very funny that I remember I was in an airport in Spain and I thought, that's it. I've got to call the show Prick. Brilliant. And along in terms of the creative process, as soon as you can name part of a thing, you go, oh, that's what this thing is, this load of stuff that I've been building.
So it was brewing up before then, was it? It was, you had these ideas.
Yeah, I've been writing the show since September, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Now that's very soon for an Edinburgh.
Yeah,
comic,
well, I say September, probably last couple of days of September. The way my calendar year works is I go to the Edinburgh Festival, I'm doing whatever show I do, and then I have the first 3 weeks of September off.
Yeah.
And I kind of go, off writing at least. I'll still gig and earn money, but I don't worry about writing for 3 precious weeks. And then come the beginning of October, I start writing next year's show.
Okay, right. So because most people, they'll put a generic name on a show.
Yes, every year I think I should do that. Every year I should do a Russell Howard and go, it's called Collie Wobbles or something. In fact, I say that. Stan Stanley did a show called Collie Wobbles, that's what I got that from. But yeah, you write a show, or I call a show Stuart Goldsmith Live. And so I have absolutely no thing to fit other than I could write the show on the 1st of August and do it on the 2nd.
Does that appeal to you? Would you like to try a show doing, or could you just not do it?
Every year I try to do that, and every year I end up writing a show about me and what a dick I am. Yeah, basically. I'm sort of wondering whether maybe these first 3 will form a kind of, in my mind only, will form a kind of triptych of, okay, that was me dealing with all of my demons, and now I can go out and write a show about, politics or frogs or something. But in all honesty, the things that I want to say, the things that I am motivated to drive up and down motorways and saying to rooms full of potentially hostile strangers, the things that it's worth me putting myself through all that to say, and this isn't a mission statement, this is just how it looks retrospectively, are things that I care about, they're things that are funny, but they're things that I want to talk about.
And does it, because all of it's been autobiographical so far, do you think you'll go away from that eventually? Or
I would
is that
be
your
very
style?
surprised if I wrote a show by choice that was all about... No, I don't know. I don't know. I tell you what's a more honest answer is if I tried to write a show about frogs, the way my mind works is I'd go, what is it about frogs that are funny, and what is it about frogs that I connect to? Like if I think frogs, the first 10 things I think about are going to be, okay, I love frogs. The reason I improvise frogs, I've always loved frogs. I used to collect little toy frogs when I was a kid, and I used to anthropomorphise them to such an extent that I could never throw them away, and they'd always end up even when I was a sort of 14-year-old, I'd be going, you can't have toy frogs anymore, Stu. They're little Kinder Egg things. Get rid of them. I'll put them in a special box. I'll put them all facing each other so they're all friends. So actually, already that thing is like me. Where do I fit into that? Yeah,
you're the centre of it.
I'm the centre of the world. Yeah,
but then that's all right because that's where the honesty comes from. And I think
absolutely, every comedian in the country can write 10 jokes about frogs. What you need to do is write the 10 jokes about frogs that only you could write, and that's my appreciation of it, maybe, yeah.
Because there's a big school of thought. I heard Simon Amstel talk about it, that it's the truth that you're trying to find, and it's the truth that's normally funny because that's what people connect to.
Yes, I'm a massive fan of Simon Amstel. I think his stuff he's one of the people I would aspire to be as gut-wrenchingly honest as. There's him, Kitson, Louis C.K. There's a lot of other people beside, but those are really the masters at. One of the Amstel's quotes, isn't it? Is something like as close as you can come to a man disemboweling himself on stage.
Yeah.
The fact of it is, though, I don't know how happy he is, and one of my life quests is also to be happy. So I don't know whether disemboweling myself would be as, I don't spend a lot of time in a room on my own smoking Gauloise and holding a pen there and going, so alone, how can I translate my thoughts? That isn't me. That's just not me.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time pretending to be a zombie for my godson.
Which is great because you can use that honesty, but Simon's a bit like that, but then I'd say Daniel probably, Kitson's not there is that side to him, but then there is also the kind of social side and wanting to be accepted, and I think that's something that we all share, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is, absolutely. I think what I'm trying to say is that although I might aspire to gut-wrenchingly honest stuff, I still want my stuff to be honest. But I think that all you can really do as a comedian, unless you're happy to contrive yourself, which I'm not, I think all you can really do is say the things you think as honestly as you can, and then cross your fingers and hope they're zeitgeist, basically. Because there's an awful lot of us, and some of us are going to rise up, and some of us are going to sink down and kill ourselves. And just to keep going is satisfaction enough. I think I'm absolutely the sort of person who, had I started comedy 17 years ago rather than 7, I'd have been quite an awful human being. Because all of those things I'm thinking about, the self-centeredness, the egotism, all those sort of things, would have run around unchecked like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd have been a better or more exciting comedian, but I don't think I'd have been happy. So I fired out lots of things there. I can't remember which one we're talking about. But yeah.
I mean, it's funny, isn't it, that it's the struggle to stand out and also be yourself, because there are...
It's exactly what it is. Yes, because it can feel a long time... For me, for someone in my position, who is not only white, male, middle class and 34, but also came from a nice, comfortable middle class background, doesn't have any demons to exercise beyond... say anxiety, bouts of depression, but not. I don't look depressed, do I? I can't talk about depression on stage. People sit there and go, "No, you aren't." You know what I mean? Whereas Amstel can. He looks. Yeah, okay. We can all imagine you cutting your wrist. You know. So, yes, I think the temptation is to think, okay, there's the spectrum. There's honesty, and honestly, I'm kind of normal. And on the other end of that spectrum is I'm contriving something, and doing a Tim Minchin and kind of backcombing your hair, wearing eyeliner, taking your shoes off.
Yeah.
Now that's an image. I mean, I don't think he's a performer as contrived, but that image is absolutely a contrivance,
yes.
and he would admit as much himself.
Totally, yeah.
So it's easy to sort of think I can make up something that I think will be different, or I can be honest and be myself. And I think that's a struggle that I had for a long time. And really, they're not at either end of a thing. I think it's possible to be different by being honest. Because I think, in all honesty, although there's lots of similarities between humans, and I always remember a Gilbert and George quote from my Ponciano colleague, that there's nothing in the world that isn't also inside each and every one of us. I think that's definitely true. But equally, the way I see the world is not the way you see the world. And it's not the way the gentleman behind the laptop sees the world, who is... Are you doing a Sudoku? I'm kidding. The way we see the world is sufficiently different, and if you can describe it in enough detail and with enough honesty, then even though I'm a normal middle-class bloke who likes wearing sort of a cross between shoes and trainers, and I like wearing fleeces, even though all those things, I've still got my point of view on the world. And if I can work hard enough and be honest enough about it and find the funny in it, then that can be really funny.
So is it always... I've spoken to quite a lot of people about...
to conceal the fact I'm drinking a generic...
It's all right, we don't have any ties. It's the balance between being an outsider and an insider, isn't it? Because alternative comedy, I think it always used to be from an outsider's point of view, in a way, or because it was alternative, it was slightly different. Whereas there's a lot more comedy from the inside now. I think people,
yes.
Hey, I'm like you, relate to me.
Yes.
Which, I suppose, would you count yourself in that camp? You kind of want people to relate to you. You want to see the similarities between people. Is that what you're trying to draw on?
I have never known whether I'm an outsider or an insider. And I would use exactly those terms as well. That's something I think about a lot. As a comedian and as a human being, I have no idea whether I'm an outsider or an insider. I look like an insider. I probably sound like an insider. I've always felt like an outsider. But maybe I just feel like that because I'm worried about whether or not I was, and that makes you feel like an outsider. Like at the school I went to, I sort of was kind of I was the top end of the wimpy kids that got picked last for the team. But I look back at it now and I think to myself, that was probably by design. I probably wanted to be.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you know what
I
I mean? I didn't like... I wasn't one of the rugby guys and I wasn't one of the super clever guys. I was someone that got on with everyone. But the people I got on with most were the geeks I played Dungeons and Dragons with. But equally, I don't know how much I was part of that team, because I was what Richard Sandling, who I used to do a double act with, called Kiosk of Champions. Richard, I don't know if you're aware of Richard Sandling. He's a very funny man. He's just been nominated for a Comedy Central Award. He's the only British act nominated for a Comedy Central Award for his YouTube video, Tom Selleck's Moustache. And he's absolutely brilliant, Richard. He is very much an outsider, and he is a sort of an obsessive, like his whole angle is he's an obsessive who lives with his parents and owns 1 billion movies, and he's like an otaku super fan of kind of geek media. So when we did a double act together, I was the insider, he was the outsider. Like, he told me once, we were in the pub, he said, I am the sort of person that at school, him and his geeky mates would have called a double agent. Because you can hang out with the geeky kids, but you're not really one of them, because if you ever don't want to, you can go and hang out with the cool kids.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
So I kind of, when he said that, I was like, oh God, I think I'm a double agent. But I wanted to hang out with the geeky kids. So
you could have been more popular. You could have been one of the...
Yeah, I kind of guess. I mean, I don't know. What I would bring it back to is I've never known. I've never known if I'm an insider or an outsider. And I think it's really important for a comic to know how they're placing themselves when they greet an audience. And I only sometimes feel like I know that. And maybe I just give the whole thing too much thought. Maybe I should just get on with the jokes. But my favourite things to do with an audience are to be really nice and sweet and charming, and then say something kind of awful or surprising, and then go like this. And there's a kind of an unspoken agreement there that I've said that, but it's okay because I'm doing this. but if we appreciate that form, then it's also, then part of what we're appreciating is I am deliberately faking this somehow, and you are complicit in that. So that's what I'm going for these days.
Yeah, so you enjoy pushing those boundaries. You enjoy not kind of staying in a set remit. You enjoy saying something that's going to surprise an audience. Increasingly,
yes. I think, a lot of my stuff in the early days, and now as well, a lot of my stuff is sexy or sexual or kinky. Like, I'm very candid on stage. And I told a story in my first Edinburgh show, The Reasonable Man, in 2010, I told a story on stage about snogging a bloke with no legs in a wheelchair in a fetish club. And it's a true story. And yet audiences, some of them would kind of go, yep, we're with you, and that's the sort of thing you do. And some of them would go, ah ha ha, because there was jokes in it, and they go, ah ha ha, the jokes are funny, but it clearly never really happened.
Yeah.
No matter how much I said this genuinely happened, they'd go, no, okay. So it's quite tricky to sort of pick a path through it, and what I'm trying to do now is, that's the honesty thing. I'm trying to say I'm honestly like this, but the difficulty is, for me, because I want to be honest about it, I don't seem to fall broadly into one or another category. So I could decide, I could go, do you know what, I'm going to be squeaky clean, I'm going to try and be the new Jason Manford, I'm going to wear a shiny suit, and I'm going to just do friendly, clean jokes. I could do that. That doesn't really appeal to me as much as it needs to be if you're going to work as hard as he works and do all those things. Similarly, part of me thinks, well, maybe I should just, wear a 1970s suit and never say a word on stage again that I've already said. Maybe I should just go out and improvise. And that appeals to me as well. That's my kind of clowny street performery background. I like the anarchy of that. But neither one of those is an honest representation of how I feel. Really what I am is I'm both.
Yes.
So I don't know what that means for my career. But it's going to be fun finding out. Yeah.
Yes, but you used to be a street performer. How long did you do that for?
I did my first ever street show for money when I was 16,
Right.
and I am 34 now, and I did my last ever street show for money. I did my last one, in fact, as part of my old street double act with my best mate Noel. I did that last year at a festival in Dublin.
Oh, and that's the final one, is that?
Well, no. I mean, I'm just
That's the
thinking,
last one you've done.
That's the last one I've done. I haven't worked full time. I used to be a Covent Garden full time person, and I haven't done that since the first year of me starting stand up. So not for 6 years, really.
But I mean, how long into your street performing time did you get the Covent Garden?
I sort of. It's difficult because I always did it whilst doing other things, but it was always my main source of income. So I was a street performer and a student for a bit, and then I was a street performer and an actor, and then I was just a street performer, and then I was a street performer at comedian. So kind of 10 years. Yeah.
Is it something that you are glad that is behind you now, that you're doing stand-up and you prefer that, or is there parts of it that you miss?
I miss elements of it. I miss desperately. The community of street performing is wonderful, and I'm only just now really starting to feel like I'm getting my hands on that kind of community in the stand-up world. I've got lots of friends who are stand-ups, but we never see each other because we're always gigging at difficult times. Whereas at Covent Garden, we'd all turn up at 8 o'clock in the morning and we'd all sit around having breakfast together, taking it in turns to have breakfast so that we could legitimately stay in the caf for 4 hours until we started doing shows every day. And so there are guys there who will be my friends for the rest of my life, and I know everything about them. And so that kind of community I miss very much. Now I'm doing my podcast, I'm finding, just over the last couple of weeks, I'm starting to go, oh yeah, I've got a thing that fits into the world that isn't, I've got a thing in which I am registering in the community of stand-up. And I'm sure I have done for ages, but I worry about it, and I go, oh, do I know anyone? Do I hang out with people, or do I just turn up? You start doing stand-up, you're with a bunch of other open spots, you hang around all night. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the difficulty is, with street performing, that continues. But with stand-up, as soon as you get successful at it, enough to earn money, you start being the one new guy in the middle of a bill of professionals who all turn up, do the job and piss off.
Okay, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
It's harder to... it's almost impossible to decide to gig with people if you're gigging at a commercial level. So I'll see my friend George Egg the other weekend in Birmingham, and George will text me and go, I'm on at the club around the corner, and we'll hang out all weekend, and it'll be amazing. But that's the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So with street performing, I mean, because it seems a very honest way to make a living.
I love it. I absolutely love street performing.
Yeah.
And if there were a way that it could lead somewhere with how I'd like to do it, I would still be doing it. I absolutely love it. It's romantic, it's exciting, the people are amazing, some of them are dicks, but it's fine. And you feel, every day you feel like a professional con artist. And I don't mean that, I don't mean you're actually conning the audience. I think it is very honest. But every day you feel like you're leading an incredible double life. You feel like a superhero. It's amazing.
Well, it's great because you ask for the money afterwards. They've seen the show and they give...
It's so honest, they pay what they think it's worth.
Exactly.
And it is possible, and I became aware that it is possible to make them think it's worth a lot more than it's worth. But I used to do good stuff. There's good guy street performers who do really good stuff.
Or
I did juggle, but juggling was never the focus. Juggling was always a little bit of the show, but I never finished on a juggling finale.
Yeah. What was it? You weren't a magician?
What I used to do was, for my solo show, I used to get 10 guys out of the audience to do a tug of war with a rope, and then I would walk along the rope, balance in the middle, and eat a packet of Walker's crisps. And the show was designed so that it packed down into a rope and a packet of crisps, and I'd go out there and get a crowd of 300 people over 45 minutes.
So it was based around that one, that was sort of the big climax.
That was the big climax, but the content of the show was audience work and banter and manipulating people and playing with people and getting them to make noise and getting them to play tricks on each other and that kind of stuff.
It was sort of a playful show, and kind of the balancing thing.
Again, it was one foot in both camps. Again, like my stand-up, it was half a guy in a suit kind of talking bollocks and doing nothing whilst making it look like you're doing something, but it was also half kind of skill, and in between that it was very, very verbal, and that's, I can't get away from it, I'm a talker. It was very, very verbal, and I would, my most enjoyable moments would be to do almost like verbal following, just making up gags about people walking past. And yeah, that was really, really exciting.
Very improvisational kind of mindset.
Yeah.
But then your shows now, they're quite structured, aren't they? They've got definite things in them. It's not so much playing with the audience.
Yes,
or have you done a bit of that?
No, there is. It's all about playing with and getting a reaction from the audience. A fabulous comedian called Adam Bloom, who you will know about, I'm sure, said it's in one of the, I think it's in the Oliver Double book. He's quoted as saying, "Learning to do stand up by practicing in a room on your own is like learning to play guitar by playing air guitar." Because the thing isn't there, the essential thing, you're playing the audience. And that's a key thing for me. But yeah, certainly I used to go through a routine and improvise it, like a mucking about routine, and improvise a couple of gags. Whereas now, I work hard to write interesting concepts and ideas and stories, and then work on them and improvise around them.
Okay, so you've never considered sort of just... Or you've never actually gone out and with nothing and just played off the audience and did a Ross Noble sort of...
Not like that, no. I find Ross Noble quite hard to watch.
He is in a way.
I sort of think he's incredible for 20 minutes, and then he's over-accepting every offer, and eventually you go, oh, you're over-accepting every offer. I think he's brilliant at it, but it's not really to my taste.
I think you have to get in the mindset of watching someone like him that he is going to take something and stretch it, and you've just got to go with it. If you're waiting for material,
sure,
you're in the wrong gig.
No, absolutely. I think my personal taste, I've seen lots of really dirty, dangerous, exciting street improvisation, and it's quite hard, I think, for me to go back into seeing theatrical improvisation. I think, although it's exciting and I recognise the form and I respect the form, it's not the same as watching a guy climb into a car and take someone's baby out of the car or whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah. And there's a genuine moment of what's going to happen now, and the guy doesn't know and the people don't know, and that to me is just 100 times more alive and exciting than hearing someone say, monkeys, here's 10 ideas about monkeys.
It's difficult as well, because if you've paid a lot of money to see a comedian, you want to see the stuff they've really worked on. And not
I mean, you can argue with Ross Noble. What he's done is he's worked on himself. He's worked on his incredible ability to do that.
Yeah. But I think actually he is better, because he does do set pieces. He's got ideas that he wants to talk about, and he is kind of best when he's talking about them, for me.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah. I see what you mean. Okay, so you prefer it when he does material.
Yeah. Although, I mean... It's difficult because in stand-up you artistically appreciate lots of different things, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just sort of choosing.
My favourite comics are probably Kitson and Louis C.K.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that Louis C.K. does that I want to go back and see him again and again is he describes how the world really is, and if he can get some idea about how the world really is, or how we all really are, or how we should live, or how we do live, or how we have to live, if he can sum something up in a way that is true and searingly honest and makes me laugh because he's packaged it such that it's painfully true, that's what I want to see. And I want to see that more than someone crowd surfing.
Yeah. So that's something that you aspire to, is it?
Yes, definitely. That definitely is something I aspire to. Yeah.
I think, seeing someone that good at just expressing just sheer honesty, and it just hits home, and it's just so much funnier because of it.
Which is not to say there isn't a place for crowd surfing, because I also like seeing that. But the thing is with comedy, it's easy to end up thinking, I like this, I don't like that. It's like music at the end of the day. There's very little music I won't listen to in a push. And there's very little in the way of something funny that I won't get something out of. You know, that I really enjoy all sorts of different facets of comedy. But I think the stuff that I go back to, the stuff that I pay to get in to see rather than hanging around to see if I can blag it in, that's the stuff which is about ideas and the world and the self and how those things...
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. I
finished that. It's all right, I will shake your hand as well.
It's all right.
But and how those things, and that was a mime, and I'm not saying any words.
It's all right. It's a good way to finish, I think. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Cheers.
I should have had coffee.